Hello listeners, this video discusses about Margaret Atwood's surfacing. Margaret Eleanor Atwood was born in Ottawa, Canada, the year 1939. She was a Canadian novelist, poet, critic, feminist, environmental activist. Her genres usually includes historical fiction, speculative fiction, science fiction, and dystopian fiction. Atwood belongs to Confessional School of Poets of 1960s. She is the founder of the Writers' Trust of Canada. She is founding trustee of the Griffin Poetry Prize. She is also called as a female star of Canada's elite. She is a prophet of her own country. She is also called as a queen of Canadian letters. Let us see some of her famous works. The Edible Women, written in 1969, it talks about proto-feminism. Surfacing, 1972, it is the companion novel to the collection of poems Power Politics. It talks about the emergence of Canadian nationalism. Next is Lady Oracle in the year 1976. Life Before Man, 1979. Bodily Harm, 1981. The Handmaid's Tale, 1985. Cat's Eye, 1988. She has also written short fiction, poetry, and some of critical works. That includes Survival, a Thematic Guide, Canadian Literature, 1972. Second Words, Selected Critical Prose, 1982. She is the recipient of many awards, such as Booker Prize for her The Blind Assassin in the year 2000, Governors General's Award in 1966 for the Circle Game. Let us have an overview about Surfacing. Surfacing is Margaret Atwood's second novel. It is published in the year 1972. This novel was also adapted into a movie in the year 1981. This novel takes place in Quebec. Quebec is a French-speaking province in eastern Canada. The novel also briefs about Quebec's population. This Quebec province is populated by the residents of French. Atwood wrote this novel Surfacing at the time when the cultural differences between Quebec and the rest of the Canada were manifesting themselves in terms of rising Quebec nationalism. There was a quiet revolution in Quebec, happened around 1960s. Quiet revolution in Quebec means that was a series of economic and educational reforms coupled with secularization of society. Atwood brings this political change in her novel Surfacing. This is a novel which talks about post-colonial events. In this novel, Atwood includes a passage that briefs about the Canadian national flag, which had only been adopted in the year 1965. Through this novel Surfacing, Atwood questions a women's conventional, social and sexual role. This novel, Surfacing, it focuses on the health risks associated with hormonal contraception, the idea of contraception as a male invention, then the power inherent in pregnancy, the social implications of makeup, the potential false ideal of marriage, the notion of a natural woman, and the psychological mechanism that men use to exert control over women. In the novel, religion becomes a false ideal. We can come across the narrator who recalls growing up in a wake of World War II and documents small effects of the war on her childhood. The novel also examines the moral landscape that is left in the wake of World War II. Let us see the characters. The narrator is the unnamed protagonist. The narrator shows immense reverence to nature, also intensely private, anti American, and introspective. The meaning of introspective is self analyzing and self examining. The narrator works as a freelance artist. She searches for her missing father on a remote island in Quebec along with her boyfriend named Joe and her friends David and Anna. The next character is Joe. Joe is quiet, a shy person who is a well behaved boyfriend. He is an unsuccessful artist who makes ugly pottery and teaches pottery classes too. He is also a potentially violent man. She also insists on marrying the narrator, but she refuses to marry. Next character is David. David is the psychologically abusive and womanizing husband of Anna. He is a communication teacher who loves baseball. Anna is the cunning wife of David who is vulnerable. In the novel, she constantly sings and applies makeup. If she needs something from her husband, she speaks so sweet with him. Next is Paul. Paul is a compassionate yet reserved best friend of the narrator's father. He is the first one to inform the narrator of her father's disappearance. He is a poor man who lives a modest life. The narrator's mother, she is an aloof and secretive woman. The meaning of secretive is a person who keeps all their feelings and intentions within themselves. They do not disclose information to anyone. And as the novel begins, the narrator's mother died due to brain tumor. In the novel, the narrator constantly thinks of her mother. Narrator's father, he is a stern man who disappears. He is an atheist and a great fan of 18th century rationalists. He also finds an island and lives there, which is away from city life. Then he dies accidentally on a trip researching local Indian wall paintings. The narrator's brother, he is a character who never appears in person. The narrator brother also runs away from his parents just before the novel has begun. Next is the fake husband. He is the narrator's ex-lover. The fake husband is eventually revealed to be the narrator's art professor, who is a married man with whom she had an affair. Bill Manstrom, he is a wealthy American whom the narrator distrusts. Next is Claude. Claude is a young boy who's working at a generic bar which is attached to a new motel in the village. Next is Evans. He is the seasoned American guide who takes the narrator Joe, Anna, and David to search the narrator's father in the island. Madame Paul's wife. Madame is a French woman who's living in the village close to the narrator's father's island. She is simple and polite. She also speaks French. Next is the town priest. The town priest is a man whom the narrator remembers from childhood. Next is the old shopkeeper and the new shopkeeper. Let us see the summary of the novel. Surfacing. The novel begins as the unnamed narrator returns to Quebec after years of absence to search her missing father. She brings her boyfriend Joe and a married couple, Anna and David. On the way to a village near her father's island, the narrator visits her father's friend named Paul. Paul was provided no information on how to locate the narrator's father. A guide named Evans, he takes the narrator and her companions to her father's island, where the narrator searches for clues regarding her father's disappearance. She then convinces herself, thinking that her father has gone mad and he is still alive somewhere. The narrator also had problem with her freelance job. Her freelance job is that to illustrate a book of fairy tales, but her worries prevent her from accomplishing her job. During the stay, David insults Anna and cracks jokes on her. Anna confesses to the narrator that David is a womanizer. She complains that David constantly demands that Anna should wear makeup. The narrator, Joe, Anna, and David, they four go on a blueberry picking expedition. They take a small boat to a nearby island. On the way, Joe unexpectedly proposes to the narrator. The narrator refuses Joe by telling him that how she left her last husband and child. Back on the island, Paul arrives with an American named Monstrom. Monstrom claims to be from a Detroit wildlife agency. He offers to purchase the island, but the narrator refuses. She pulls Paul aside and tells him that her father is still alive. Paul seems skeptical. After the visitors leave, David offhandedly accuses Manstrom of being a CIA operator who is organizing an American invasion of Canada. The narrator looks through her father's records and consequently believes that he is likely dead. She sees that he had been researching Indian wall paintings and that he had marked several sites on a map. On looking those sites, she decides to visit a particular site. The narrator also convinces her friends to accompany her on a camping trip to see the wall paintings. On their way to the campsite, they see a decomposing blue heron that has been hanged from a tree. Now, David insists on filming the dead heron for a movie he is taking called Random Samples. The heron's death haunts the narrator. The narrator also sees two campers entering the area beforehand, and she quickly assumes that they are Americans and they are to be blamed for the crime. Meanwhile, the four companions set up a camp. Anna tells the narrator that she has forgotten her makeup and David will punish her. Then the narrator goes fishing with David and Joe. They encounter the Americans and the narrator notices an American flag on their boat. The narrator brings her companions to a site from her father's map, but there are no wall paintings. She is frustrated and confused. Then they return to camp. On the way, they gain encounter to the American campers. The narrator is surprised to discover that the campers are actually Canadian. Initially, the flag that she thought was American was not a flag but a sticker. However, the narrator claims the campers are still Americans because their slaughter of the heron is a distinctively American action. Then the four return to their cabin. Then the narrator locates another site from her father's map but realizes that the government has raised the water level in this part of the lake that they are about to visit. She thinks that she will have to dive to see the paintings. The narrator also observes David torturing Anna by insisting her to take off her clothes for his random samples. Then Anna eventually feels that she is humiliated by her husband David. The narrator also asks David why he tortures Anna, and David claims that he does so because Anna cheats on him. Then the narrator takes a small boat to a site from her father's map. She dives repeatedly in search of the paintings. On a particular deep dive, she sees a disturbing object and screams and swims from the surface. However, Joe has followed her and demands to know what she is doing. She ignores Joe and realizes that what she saw was a dead child. She believes it to be her aborted baby. She just imagines. She changes the topic and says about her story from leaving her husband and child to having an affair with her art professor who forced her to abort their baby. Then the narrator's thought process becomes serious mental illness that affects her whole personality. And due to the mental illness, she also believes that her father had found sacred Indian sites and resorts to thank the gods for granting her the power. However, Joe wants to speak to her, but she refuses to communicate with him. He tries to rape her, but he leaves her alone once she warns him that she will get pregnant. Later, David tries to seduce the narrator. However, the narrator tries to resist David's intention. Then a police boat comes to the island, and David tells the narrator that the police have found her father's body. As she is deep in her madness, the narrator refuses to believe David, and that night she seduces Joe so she can get pregnant. She feels that a new child will replace her lost baby. Now, Joe falsely believes that the narrator has forgiven him for cheating on her. On their last day on the island, the narrator abandons her friends. She destroys David's film and escapes in a boat. The narrator's companions search in vain for her, eventually leaving the island. Alone on the island, the narrator falls deeper into her madness. She destroys the art from her job and nearly everything inside the cabin. She becomes like an animal, runs naked around. She eats unwashed plants and she lives in a burrow. She also imagines raising her baby outdoors and never wanted to teach it a language. She also visions of her parents. As time passes by, she gets hunger and she's exhausted. She looks at herself in the mirror and sees just as a natural woman. She thinks that she is no more powerful. She thinks as if she's powerless anymore. Then Paul arrives at the island with Joe. The narrator realizes that she loves Joe and resolves to unite with him. The novel ends as she is waiting in the cabin looking for Joe. Hope this video helped you. If you have any query or suggestion, please write it down on the comment section. Thank you for listening. Please keep yourself subscribed.